back. Well, as you know, here in Canada, we have started a website called fightthefines.com. And it's about fighting these outrageous, overweening actions by police and bureaucrats, ticketing people for walking their dog, fining people for feeding the homeless. We have almost a dozen cases, and we'll show you them every day or so as our lawyer processes them. We're doing the civil liberties work that the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, for some reason, refuses to do. You would think this would be their banner moment, a kind of martial law. Well, we're filling that void in Canada. I'm very proud of our viewers for supporting us. But I am even more amazed and impressed by what I see in the United States. Same thing down there, the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. Well, they're not really in the driver's seat. I wonder why, but look at this tweet from my friend Harmeet Dhillon, a lawyer in Silicon Valley who's actually helped us out here at Rebel News before. She tweeted, "If you'd like to support this important civil rights work, please visit libertycenter.org and contribute. Literally no other civil rights organization in America has filed as many lawsuits to liberate America from unconstitutional, overbroad, and arbitrary COVID orders." Hashtag freedom. And if you go to that website, libertycenter.org, it's a new freedom-oriented civil liberties group. Fascinating cases. You can see the lawyer Harmeet Dhillon there. And if you go to her own law firm page, it's got beautiful graphics that sum up the nature of the different kinds of cases. For example, churches being closed, businesses being told you're essential, but you're not, protests being banned, the government taking the opportunity to spend money on illegal aliens. So many different species of lawsuits. Joining us now to talk about her campaign. I was going to call her a one-woman army, but I know she's got a team with her. My friend Harmeet Dhillon joins us now live via Skype. Harmeet, great to see you. Congratulations. I knew you would do this. You've helped us before, and now you're helping America fight for freedom. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a really exciting time for civil libertarians. Unfortunately, it's a little bit lonelier than I thought it would be. Fighting these battles, because most of America seems to want to accept the government controlling every aspect of our lives. And my concern as a civil libertarian is not so much about the current situation. Of course, we all want to be safe. We want to make sure none of our neighbors or our family members or anybody around the world perishes from this disease. But I'm concerned about what happens with the next crisis and the next crisis. And I frankly don't want to live in a society where the governor tells me I'm not essential, where I don't have the right to pray, but people who consume alcohol, marijuana, and other vice goods have the right to go buy that because their lobbyists are better than the church lobbyists. So I think these are some of the issues that we face here, is making sure that those fundamental civil liberties are respected. And I think they're even more important in a time of crisis than before.
Yeah, you know, Naomi Klein, the Canadian socialist author, wrote a book called The Shock Doctrine, and she claimed crises allow capitalists to take root. I think that was a trick. It's the opposite. As so many leftists and Democrats say, never let a crisis go to waste. And I think what's happened here is that there may have been, or it looked like there was possibly going to be, a public health crisis. Thankfully, it hasn't really taken root anywhere, probably not even in New York. But opportunistically, every big government scheme said, oh, I can rebrand this as an emergency virus measure. I'm going to shut down churches. I'm going to do massive spending. I'll just sort of say what is this. Like, there's so many things that have sneaked in as stowaways with legitimate virus reactions. I think that's what's really gone on. The virus itself, thankfully, isn't a crisis, but all these other things that we've been saddled with really have nothing to do with the virus, do they?
That's right. For example, we've seen the media, even before the government got involved, crowing about the fact that since there's a shutdown, this is really great for the environment and global warming, and we have less traffic on the roads, et cetera. So you can see the agenda immediately is they're always looking for an opportunity to take advantage. But Right now, one of the lawsuits that the center filed was on behalf of a couple of Latino Californians who challenged the governor's order to give $75 million of taxpayer money to illegal alien workers who are unemployed right now in this crisis. And that violates state law and it violates federal law as well. But they're getting away with it because guess what? The legislature is out of session, the courts are closed, and it's frankly popular politically amongst the allies of the governor. City councils are doing this as well throughout California. They're taking advantage of the fact that Congress's eyes are elsewhere and there's no bandwidth for law enforcement. But this is illegal in our country the way it's being done. And, when patrons who get this money, they know who gave it to them. So it's going to be turned into a political advantage by the left. And so we have to be vigilant about that. Right now, Americans are out of work. We're soon from having among the lowest unemployment in history. We're going to have 20% unemployment as a result of China's sending this disease over here by their negligence or worse. And so I think it's really important that we prioritize people who follow the law, be they immigrants or citizens. And also on a humanitarian basis, of course, we have to take care of people's food needs and health if they're in a crisis, regardless of their legal status. I don't have a problem with that. But subsidizing people who are working here illegally and encouraging that is against our public policy, and it's against my moral beliefs as well.
Here in Canada, I have been appalled that civil liberties groups have just said, no, we're going to sit this one out. Our version of the ACLU literally put up a website saying, yeah, you can send us your stories and we'll put together a little scrapbook afterwards when it's all over. Like they say, yeah, send us your complaints and we'll write about them later. Yeah, no, I need a doctor to fix the disease, not to write an autopsy. That was my line.
That's right.
Can you tell me in America, I read on your tweet and I looked at your impressive websites, that you filed more cases than anyone else. Where have the traditional liberal defenders of, well, that's where the word liberal comes from the Latin root for freedom. Where are the lefty or liberal civil libertarians? Aren't they concerned about these house arrest and martial law type orders?
I think they have some niche concerns, okay? So here in California, the niche concerns are letting as many criminals or accused criminals out of the prisons as quickly as possible with no conditions. In fact, just yesterday, I saw a news story in Orange County where numerous sex offenders were released from the county jail to the extent that the district attorney there, who disagreed with this, issued a public warning to people saying, there's a bunch of sex offenders on the loose. So this is kind of what's happening there. There have been some, thought pieces about how is this crisis impacting the transgender community and, et cetera. And there's been one legitimate issue that I think, at least in New York, activists have taken up, and I think in California as well, which is apparently the early lists regarding who would get a ventilator put people who are disabled and elderly at a lower priority than younger people and people who are not disabled. That's, of course, disgusting and appalling, and the governor and his team have dialed that back. But so that's a legitimate thing to focus on, but nowhere is anybody focusing on we have 5 rights under our First Amendment right to free speech: the right to free press, assembly, petition the government, worship, and religion. So, and I think I've maybe restated one of those, but from the beginning of this crisis, our governor gave the media an exemption from these orders. So the media was all considered essential workers, but church, not essential, assembly, not essential. One of the lawsuits I filed has sued the governor for banning all political protest at the Capitol. Speech is limited to what you can do from your home, which is a significant limitation. And petitioning the government, when you're not allowing protests, that's assembly, speech, and petition. So these are fundamental rights, and nobody's fighting for them except for us here in California. I think that the issues now with regarding churches, people are beginning to wake up and stand up for their rights. We had at the first month of this, our Catholic friends said, we're going to follow the Pope's lead and the bishop and the archbishop, and they don't want to do anything about this. They want to go along. But when yesterday our governor said he's going to allow schools to open up sooner than churches, there's no public health or logical justification for that. That's simply putting religion at a third tier level of importance in our world, and it's totally unacceptable. I can tell you as a person of faith, our faith is much more important to people who have faith in a crisis than it is in normal terms. And telling people they have to stay inside to pray with their family, but they can go out to get any other item that they need because the marijuana industry or the alcohol industry have their lobbyists or addicts amongst people who make policy, I think that's really insulting and offensive.
Yeah, we heard that exact same line from a pastor in Aylmer, Ontario. He said, I just want to be treated the same way as the local liquor store. I thought that was a good way to put it. Well, I'm so pleased that you're fighting the fight. I would like to encourage all our viewers to go to libertycenter.org, and center is spelled the American way, CENTER.org. Do you accept donations? How are you paying for this? Are they pro bono lawyers? Are you paying people? Where's the money coming from?
So our model is pro bono or low bono, meaning any lawyer who represents clients through our efforts either agrees to do it for free, which is, by the way, in many bar associations in the United States, lawyers are requested and in some cases mandated to do a certain amount of work for free for the public. And, they usually have some left-wing causes that they're allowed to do it for, but they're in fact allowed to do it for our cause as well. We're a recognized charity in America. Or if they need to get paid, which, of course, not everybody can afford to work all of this time for free, they get paid a fraction of what their normal rate is, and the center pays the filing fees and court costs for our cases. And so we absolutely rely on donations from the public. And in America, those donations are tax deductible, but we will take them from anywhere they'd like to come.
Sure. Well, of course, Canada has deep problems too, but we have American viewers, and I'd certainly encourage them to go to Liberty Center, CENTER.org. And I see it right there in the top right, that red button says give, because I know firsthand how effective you and your team are. And it's amazing, you're right there in one of the most liberal cities in America, San Francisco, but you're fighting for freedoms. Here's one worry I have. I remember the last massive crisis in America that everyone felt like they were in it together and scared all together. I'm referring to 9/11. And out of that came a number of awful decisions, including something that lives with us to this day, the TSA, the people at the airport that touch and grope and search and delay. And as far as I know, in the 20 years that the TSA and our Canadian version, the CATSA, have been in effect, not a single terrorist has ever been found. But millions of people have been groped, billions of dollars have been spent, tens of billions of dollars of costs foisted on the industry, and worse than all that, that's just money and groping. We have been conditioned to become obedient. We're now cool with strangers with the imprimatur of the government's authority touching us, making us take off our belts and get uncomfortable. And that would have been unthinkable to the sense of personal self-respect of any ordinary American and Canadian. Now we just say, oh yeah, that's just how it is. That's the new normal. Right. We've been conditioned. I'm worried that we're going to be conditioned to accept infringements on our liberties from this crisis.
Well, you're 100% correct. After 9/11, I was just an ordinary lawyer toiling away in the fields. And, people from my faith community, the Sikh community, my brother and other people in my family wear turbans. We were getting both harassed by racists, of course, so that's a problem, but also the government came knocking on the doors of people who looked different, brown-skinned people, people from India, and just, harassing people, asking all the Muslims to come in for questioning. This is outrageous as well. And so that's when I joined the American Civil Liberties Union, because I was an activist on behalf of the Sikh community and the Asian community. And they didn't know I was a conservative. They just knew I was doing the same work. And they did good work at that time pushing back. We did good work trying to educate Americans about the Patriot Act. But the Patriot Act, out of which a lot of these surveillance mechanisms have flown, every Democrat voted for it except for one. Every Republican voted for it. And, Nancy Pelosi voted for it. And today, the Patriot Act is used to impose additional externalities on our banking transactions, as well as all the TSA stuff that you mentioned, and other surveillance. And now our governor is talking about basically saying it, if you read carefully, a surveillance state regarding health issues. So, eventually when you get tested for COVID, the government's going to track you and see what happens with that disease. And God forbid, if you're positive for it, you may lose your liberty. And I'm deeply concerned about that. And I don't accept it as a condition of living in a free society. as I've written in some of our legal briefs, there is not a presumption of illness in our Constitution or in our public health laws. It is the government's burden to prove that somebody is communicable and then treat them with the limited amount of restraint necessary to achieve the government interest. Not closing churches until November or until next year, until when the governor says it's okay because maybe he doesn't care about going to church himself. It's not a convenience. It's not like going to the nail salon. It's very important. And by the way, the nail salon is very important for the people who work there and for the people who go there and for the vendors who sell them supplies. I have received hundreds, if not thousands, of heartbreaking stories. I'm receiving 24 of them every hour of businesses in California and citizens who work in businesses that have been shut down for, frankly, no good reason at this point. This entire crisis was, I think, exaggerated in terms of its importance, and it is now being used to shut down our civil liberties in California and around the country, by the way. While our president is urging that we begin going back to work as normal, but do it prudently, the governors are not hearing the prudent part. They're loving their absolute control, and unless the citizens begin to fight back, we're going to be living under their thumb forever.
You know, you're so right. The merger of the big surveillance, big data, and big government is terrifying. Just a quick clip. Here's Canada's public health officer, our version of the U.S., Dr. Fauci. Here she is in a documentary about a theoretical smallpox outbreak, musing about having everybody tracking everybody with bracelets and having police detention centers for recalcitrants. Here, take a look at Theresa Tam a few years ago.
If there are people who are non-compliant, there are definitely laws and public health powers that can quarantine people in mandatory settings. It's potential you could track people, put bracelets on their arms, have police and other setups to ensure quarantine is undertaken.
Well, that's what the conversation was like 10 years ago. Now, with databases and cell phone tracking, that daydream by Canada's health authoritarians, it's 1 inch from reality. I heard that Ontario's government gave the health info straight to the police, just handed it over. I think we're about 1 inch away from what China calls their social credit system, where they know everything about you, everything you've searched on the internet, your financial information, your health information, your police information. That's, you know, a total surveillance state. And China had it first, but I'm worried we're stumbling there. I don't want to sound paranoid or terrified, but these are these crisis moments where authoritarians can make their move. Am I being too cautious or too concerned?
Not at all. We're seeing it in front of our eyes. The governor of California's 6-step program involves really tracking everybody and making sure everybody's vaccinated or not allowed to participate in society. And frankly, from what I've seen and the conflicting stories about the origin of this virus and its long-term health impacts, I'm not going to be one of the first people to get that vaccine, I can tell you that. And, you know, I think it is time that we prudently take precautions. I'm certainly, you know, not the spring youth of my life. And, you know, we need to take precautions if we're older or more vulnerable. But that does not mean we do not go on with our lives. There are many risks out there. When you drive on the highway, you have a risk of dying from a traffic accident. And we all need to factor those risks, accept them, be careful to not infect other people, and go back to our lives as normal as fast as possible, lest we all end up presiding over the murder of our economy and all of the lives we've built around ourselves.
Well, Harmeet Dhillon, what a pleasure to catch up with you. You've been a friend to Rebel News before, and you're a friend to Liberty. I knew that you would pick up this challenge. I just knew it in my bones. And I'm so proud that we know you. I'm grateful for the time you've given us on the show today. We're a Canadian-based news network, as you know, but we have many friends in the United States. We're going to put this on YouTube and email it out. And to my American friends in particular, I would encourage you to put your money where your mouth is and go to libertycenter.org and click on that red button in the top right corner. As you heard Harmeet say, many of the lawyers are pro bono or low bono. They're just working for a fraction, but there's still costs, filing fees, you know, couriers, even the website itself. So I think that a small investment in liberty is what we should all do. And here in Canada, of course, we have our own campaigns. Harmeet, great to see you. I'll let you get back to work. It sounds like you're very busy. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much.
All right, there you have it. Harmeet Dhillon, a Liberty lawyer. That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.